Hi, I'm Scott Davidson. I work at PLAYERUNKNOWN Productions. I'm the art director, and this is a presentation I've done a couple of times, and I've been iterating it over time. And I thought like this would be a good one to do for everybody. Uh, so people know what imposter syndrome is. This relates to Tom Hanks himself, uh, who suffers from it. So if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it is a persistent inability to believe that one's success is derived or even legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts. So basically, think that at the back of your head that at some point someone's going to come to you and say, "I don't know how you've managed to have a career at doing this, but I think it's over now because we've realised you're rubbish and you can't do it." Yeah, and this primarily affects people who are high achieving, quite successful people. Um, uh, it manifests as anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, and fear of failure. There are other little ones that kind of some people respond to, but generally these are the big ones. So the name of the talk is about Tom Hanks, and he is one of the sort of most kind of prevalent people, famous people who does suffer from this. Every time he goes onto a set, he thinks this is it. This is the moment they will realize that I'm a loser. And clearly he's not, because that's him like winning Oscars for Forrest Gump and Philadelphia, and him being presented with the Medal of Freedom by his friend Barack Obama. And there's him with the late Queen, and again his best friend Barack Obama. So clearly he's not a failure. Clearly but he still feels it. Um, First documented in highly achieving women in the 1970s. There was a report of this. It said it was very prevalent among women, especially women of color. Some men also were susceptible. Uh, Obviously, like that was the 1970s, so we've moved on a little bit now. A recent study found that 74% of women executives across the industries have experienced imposter syndrome. It's the same for men as well. So these are sort of highly achieving people. Uh, um, Another study: 70% of US population have experienced these feelings. And I think the higher you go, the more you see that how far you could fall, and I think the worse it can get if you have a bad day. So when I'll tell you a bit about myself. So when I was little, my father decided to not be a dad, and he moved to America. He was a chef, and I never met him. So I thought, right, okay, that's what I'll do with my life. I'll be a chef. So I got a job through my school, working at a restaurant, and I thought the chef that I'd work with would be like this, and he'd teach me all these things. He wasn't. He was like this. It was awful. I didn't want to do it. I got fired. In fact, it was not good. Um, uh, I did not do well in school at all. Um, uh, the traditional school system does not suit my brain at all. I would sit in the in classes and just think, how can anyone concentrate? This is boring. I hate all of it. Um, so the one thing I was good at and I enjoyed was art. So I went to Plymouth Art College, which is in Devon in England, and that's what it looked like when I went there. All kind of grey and industrial, and it looks a lot more nice and fresh now. And I did a sort of a foundation course, which I recommend if people are starting out in, they're sort of quite young, that they do a foundation course. Any course that kind of gives you a grounding in art theory, history, color theory, proportions, anatomy. It's really good because then you can kind of see what you like within um, that those different areas, and then focus on it later. So I did a foundation course. It was sort of graphic design and type design, sort of designing fonts. And then at the same time as that, I was a nerd, obviously, so I liked airfix kits, and then it transitioned into like painting Space Marines, and I got pretty good at it. But then it made me think, okay, maybe I could do this for a job. Can I do this for a job? And obviously, go and work for Games Workshop, probably not going to happen. But I thought, well, there's the special effects industry, and they build a lot of miniatures. So then I went, into model making. So there was a course in the Kent Institute for Art and Design in Rochester, in the Medway region, and I did that. But the problem is, at the same time, as I was doing that course, a little film called Jurassic Park came out, and that kind of decimated the entire traditional special effects industry because clearly computers were the future. So the work dried up. So as I was graduating, there was nothing. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to learn how to use a computer. And this is like 1990, late 90s. So I bought a computer with some savings. Um, it was like I had 38 meg of RAM, and I had a copy of 3D Studio Release 4 and a copy of Lightwave, and I learned 3D and I learned how to animate characters and skin characters. It's very different from these days. There's lots of different particular programs that you had to use for different aspects of making models. So yeah, it's a lot easier these days. And then my idea was obviously to get into the special effects industry, but with computers. And then I had my computer and I bought Quake, and I was like, this is cool. So I thought, well, maybe I could do this instead. The sort of, it's still 3D, it's still kind of art. So I applied for some jobs. My parents, then, because my mother got remarried, I had a stepdad. He was a bank manager. He suggested I should get a normal job, that maybe this was not going to really happen. But they still gave me the bandwidth to actually try this. And I did do a full-time job at the same time working in a factory, to appease them. So back to sort of like the topic, you can see from kind of like my family dynamic that some researchers believe that it has roots in labeling parents attached to members of the family. So I was the oldest child. My dad my stepdad used to, I don't think he did it badly, but he would call me an idiot sometimes. But that really stuck. Yeah. That I didn't think I was kind of good enough for anything. And then another theory says that parents that program their child with a message of superiority can actually result in the opposite. I'm less inclined to believe this because people who are kind of instilled with those have the opposite. They have the Dunning-Kruger effect, where they're stupider than they think they are. They think they're way smarter. So I made a portfolio of my work and I sent it to some game studios. Like I had to send discs. Yeah, this is how old I am. Like floppy disks in the post. Yeah. I had a guy, an art director, and I don't know if he was having a bad day or whether he generally hated what I was doing. But he phoned up and he told me in no certain terms that I should just not do this, and I was rubbish and I sucked, and he went through and he critiqued every one of my pieces, and and it was like, wow, this is crazy. But then the day later, I got some interviews. So there's some lessons in here. If others don't believe in you, that will reinforce it. You can see with that, if I believe that guy, um, and I believe my dad when he said I was stupid, then that could make it even worse. And I think, like with all these experiences, it is at the back of your head. There's that guy at the back of your head saying you're never going to do this. But then I got an interview, and then I got a job at a company called Blitz Games, which was a company in England who lasted for about 20 years. Mostly we worked on licensed software. Now you'd think that's when the imposter syndrome would really kick in, when I got a job in the industry. Like I got a job in the dream. Yeah, I managed to do it. Didn't really happen. Uh, I kind of like, I got it, but okay, well, they gave me a job, so I must be okay. Also, I did have a manager who gave me positive feedback. Yeah, and I had people around me who gave me positive feedback, so they would say, oh no, this is good, this work is good, and these are experienced people who've been doing work in the industry for a long time. It doesn't stop it, but you need encouragement. You need to have those moments when someone's checking in on you and saying, yep, continue doing this, this is good. I made games for every console. at the time, all the way up to sort of PlayStation 3 and moving on to PlayStation 4. Yeah, we were doing games every year, sometimes like one a year, and then towards the end it was two a year. It was one every 2 years, so the development cycle went up a little bit. Uh, um, and then the industry died for making licensed software. So there were no more making games of films that were coming out in Christmas. This just stopped happening. Uh, and the company just went bankrupt. I found another job at a place called Rebellion because I was working with them currently on a project. But I worked there for about 8 years. Sorry, 8 months. The commute was too long. It was not very pleasant. Um, uh, and I really did like it. Um, but at that point, I'd become kind of like I'd got to a sort of a level of being a manager. Yeah. And that had been the point where I was like, this is scary. And it had happened at Blitz before, where I'd been offered a position as like a head of a team, and I was like 24 at the time, and I freaked out because I at the back of my head I was like, that this is definitely they're going to find out that I'm rubbish and that I can't do it. So I actually said no, and this is where it can affect you, because if I'd have said yes, maybe my career would be very different. I'm happy where I am now. I do really well, but you don't know where you would have been if those decisions were made pragmatic instead of it with the back of your head saying you're a loser. Yeah. But then when it did suit me, then I said yes, and it went really well. Um, uh, and then yeah, that was my first art director job. And then after that, it's kind of been doing well. I mean, it's a hard job, and there are more chances, or there are moments where the days where things go wrong really badly, and those are the moments where you think, oh God, I they're really going to find out. But generally, it'll go after a day. So yeah, I was at Rebellion, lasted there for 8 months, but the commute was so long, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I decided to write down what I wanted for my career, and these were the things I wanted. Those four specific things. Um, uh, and just by writing them down, it made me then be able to focus on, like, when I heard that in a conversation or when I saw that in a job advert, to be able to pick out the places I wanted. What actually happened was, like, I went for a drink with a friend who recently got a job at a place called Facebook Studios, which I thought would be in California somewhere, but it wasn't. It was around the corner from where I lived, and he was like, "Well, we're always looking for people," and I got in contact with Gary Newman, who runs the place, and we talked. And he was like, "Well, come and talk, and let's come into the studio and we'll have a chat." So that worked out really well. And but what worked out even better is that I'd learned then that you have to interview the employer as well as they're interviewing. So while they're interviewing you, you have to be interviewing them as well. Because if you suffer from imposter syndrome, like, you have to make sure that you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to get there, where the culture of the studio you're going to work in is going to help reinforce the positive aspects of what you're doing. If it's a place where it's a cutthroat place where there's a lot of backstabbing and there's a lot of people who will say one thing to your face but say other things behind your back, there's a toxic place. Yeah, you can work that out in the interview pretty quickly. So I got a job there, which is really good. I worked on Rust for like nearly 5 years. The goal was kind of to get it from a point where it looked really bad, graphically very bad, just using internet assets off the Unity asset store, to something that kind of was compelling and immersive, and that worked out. But after that, after Face Punch, and after this, like, from those 4 years of getting it looking really bad to start with to looking reasonable, I kind of, like, there was nothing really else to do. there was no real challenge, and that's what. And then I referenced back to my things missed applied. So then I started looking around for something else. Um, uh, so there's another life lessons there is that that the place I was working at FacePoint, it was good. Yeah, we got quarterly bonuses. The salary was good. It was comfortable. Uh, and for someone with imposter syndrome, that can be very compelling because in a safe environment, uh, you can feel okay. Well, I don't need to worry about anything now. I can just do this forever, and I'll never have uh, the worries again. But if you're someone who kind of craves kind of new ideas and new excitement, that it's a bad thing. And in fact, most people should never settle for that. This is not a industry for that. It's not an industry where you can have start a company and then work there for the rest of your life. Um, it still happens, but it's very rare. You have to kind of move. There's a really good book I read recently, which is useful to read. Uh, and this kind of indicates that there are two different types of people. Jeremy Guthrie is CEO of Trend Hunter, and he said this. He said there are people called farmers and there are people called hunters. So the farmer takes their success and tries to optimize to maximize profit and minimize loss. And that's on a personal level. So on a company level, yes, once you've created something really good, you think, wow, well, we've done it now. We're making loads. Let's just optimize that. Let's just kind of tweak it a little bit, and we can relax and sit back and watch the money roll in. That can end badly, and eventually does end badly. And I think for an individual, it ends badly as well. Whereas the hunter searches for something new and is fine with destroying what comes before. You're not destroying technically. I'm not leaving a company and burning the headquarters to the ground. But you're leaving it behind, going, I've done that. I learned a lot from that. Now I need something new. So this is a really good outlook. And if you want to be a farmer, that's fine. But at some point, something's going to happen, and you're going to realize, oh, this was a mistake. And George Carlin as well, the late George Carlin. This is how he viewed his career. So every year he would write a new set. So he'd have a successful tour, like a world tour, and everyone would laugh and make loads of money. And then at the end, he would destroy all those jokes. He would just rip them all up, throw them away, and start new with new ideas and new thoughts, and go deeper into himself to find the humor. And I think as individuals that's we should do. And I think, but it's harder for people with imposter syndrome. But yeah, change is how we grow. You have to kind of keep moving forward, especially in this industry. So then after Face Punch, I got talking to a guy called Ralph Ias, who runs a company in the Netherlands called Abstraction, and he had some really cool ideas about development, and I was really excited about that. So I moved over to the Netherlands, which I'm still at, and yeah, started working with him. This is a interesting lesson because as an artist, a lot of people find it very hard to separate themselves from the work that they're doing. So you put all your passion and your effort into the work you're doing, and then someone says it's not very good, and you take that as a personal insult. When in reality, for the majority of people, they're not saying that you're rubbish and that they hate you. It's that this is bad work. Yeah. You may have a bad day. You might not have the right brief. You might not have been directed right. Yeah. It might not just be your strong suit. And everybody in your team wants to actually make the work better. And if you can kind of separate your personal feelings and from the work you're doing, and see the work as a separate thing, then it helps a lot. So like it worked really well at Abstraction. I had a good time there, like nearly 3 years. I mean, I'd worked from home, so this is like home working here. I'd worked from home at Facebook for years, so like when COVID hit, I didn't really mind. It was fine. I fell back into kind of like old ways of communicating. But then towards the end of COVID, well, the end of last year, I was approached on LinkedIn by Natalia, who's from PLAYERUNKNOWN Productions, and she said, "Hey, we saw your profile, and we see your work kind of resonates with us. Would you like to have a conversation?" And even if you're happy, which I was, and I would totally go back to abstraction again because I loved it there. Even if you're happy, if someone offers you an opportunity to talk, just to talk, take it. Yeah, it's just to talk. You don't have to commit to anything. You don't feel like you're betraying anyone. Just see what see what they have to say. Um, uh, and sometimes like yeah, that feeling is kind of scary. Yeah, to think, oh yeah, well this is I'm happy here. Well, why would I want to leave? And then it's comfortable. But like the reality is that the chemicals in your body that um, make you feel afraid are exactly the same chemicals that make you feel excitement. So it's pretty much the same thing. So I'm now working at PLAYERUNKNOWN Productions. It's going really well. So over the sort of last since 1997 when I started work, these are the kind of things that I've worked out how to help me cope. Um, we work in the industry of introverts. So if you're an introvert, try and make friends with people who aren't. It's very hard. They're quite loud, but it'll help. Um, if you worry about being intellectually lacking, you think you're stupid. Again, if you've got into the industry, people have given you a job, you're not stupid. Um, but take a course and make you feel better. Try new foods, activities, broaden your horizons, and your ability to relate to others. You fill your life with kind of interesting experiences and stories. There's more to talk about. This one's really important. Keep a diary or at a minimum just a record of like big achievements you've had on a daily basis, weekly basis. If you can't retain that information in your head, always your head has an ability to sort of skew it to be positive or negative depending on the outlook you have. But if you write it down, you can look back on it and you can go, yeah, no, like when you have a bad day, you can look back at all the things you achieved and you go, yeah, I am good. Yeah. So as I said, studies suggest that we recall bad memories more easily um, because they benefit us if evolutionary wise. So yeah, it's not great for us, but if you write it all down, it makes it better. And on a professional level, find a mentor. Even if you're starting out, you're sort of at university and you want to get into the industry, find someone you respect who's willing to give you time. And actually, the right people will always give you time. And if you can you can find a good relationship where there's mutual respect, that's good. Yeah, it can be someone you work with, or someone who can just invest time in you to give you advice, because it will help you when you fear like, okay, am I going in the right direction? Am I doing the right thing by doing this piece of work, or focus on this project for my portfolio? They can go, yeah, no, this is good, or no, you should do this. And then when you do get in the industry, or you're moving around, work in an environment with people who prioritize positive reinforcement and honesty. The culture of the company is so important, and if you go to a place that you feel comfortable there and you feel like the people around you have the right ideas, then that's probably the place for you. So the other thing is like there was a TED talk about imposter syndrome a while ago, and it's good it's on YouTube, you should watch it. And she kind of like what she did in her mind, she created this, because you have a voice at the back of your head that tells you you're an idiot, and so she gave it a face. Yeah. So she made it into this, and then she made like a positive one, so the opposite. Yeah. So I did the same thing like recently. So like I remember a TV show when I was a kid where there was this sergeant major. It was a comedy, and Battery Sergeant Major Bryn Williams, um, and he was horrible. He would just shout at all the other soldiers and get angry. So I kind of he's my demon. But the thing is, though, I always find him really funny, so I don't really take it very seriously. So when he says stuff to me in my head, it makes me laugh. So that's a positive thing to do. That's all I've got to say. If people have questions, then that's cool. I will stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Scott. Actually, we have a lot of questions. What do you think about the phrase "fake it till you make it"? As anybody goes to job knowing how to actually do the specific job, but instead goes to learn how to do that job.
I to be honest, what I do when I'm in actually trying to find somebody, um, is I'm looking for their skills, but it's more personality than anything. Especially if, for me at the moment, it's a small team. Everyone needs to kind of have the right outlook and the right communication skills. So even if you feel your work is not as great as it could be, you may find that actually like the things that you're actually good at are the things you can focus on when you get the job. If you got the job, yeah, just prioritize kind of. Yeah, I think fake it till you make it is actually a good thing. There was some bullshit study a while ago that I was used to quote to people, and they said men tend to do this more. So they will look at a job description, and if there's 30% of that job description they can do, then they'll apply for it anyway. Whereas women, they have to have 80% of that. Actually, it's bullshit. That was it was dismissed. So actually, like, most people will look at a job description and they'll try and kind of work out, okay, how much do I feel comfortable in not knowing to apply for this? And to be honest, even if it's 20% that you think you know, it doesn't hurt to apply. All they can say is no.
How do you choose assets for a portfolio that catch an eye of a recruiter?
Um, how do I do it? Um, it's a balance of kind of like high quality work depending on the job role. So say for example, if you're a 3D artist, if you're just building props and environment stuff and weapons, then you're prioritizing like a high quality pieces. So even if you have 5 pieces in your portfolio or 3 pieces, if they're really good, that catches people's attention. If you're a concept artist, what I'm looking for specifically is what goes on inside your head. So because that's the difference between illustration and concept art. Concept art is generating ideas. And what tends to happen if you go into ArtStation is you find the best concept artists, um, even they just have like really curated, beautiful pieces. Because what happens is they work on a game, and then when that game gets released, they want to put their work on their portfolio, and the company they work for, um, they have to approve those pieces. So they say, I want to put these pieces out, and the people who are approving them just go, no, we want finished pieces of art on there. And then I'm like, well, that doesn't teach me anything about how your brain works. So what we want is working pieces, is like sketches, yeah, idea generation, like lots of different ideas. Because if you don't do that, I have to do a test. I have to get people to do an extended test to sort of work out what goes on inside your head. For animation, it's just good quality animation. It can be good walk cycles, good little um, uh, pulling up from like ledges. Those are always good. It doesn't have to be kind of ridiculous cutscenes. Um, you know, I always like sort of good dialogue. Like if you can get sort of facial animation and get emotion in there, that's really good. Um, uh, yeah, I could go through every job title, but I'm not going to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, everybody, for the questions. And we go on with the program. Thank you.
Okay.